Hey everybody, welcome back to another Dead by Daylight video. So today I wanted to start to get back into the discussion side of YouTube in the Dead by Daylight space. Something that I basically started with and I kind of fell off because of technical issues. And now that I can get back to it and maybe get back into the groove of it, I want to see how things go with it. This doesn't mean any of the other content's changing or anything like that, but I figured we'd start and see where things go from here. So I wanted to talk about Lara Croft. And yes, Lara, not Laura, Lara. Just making that clear. Anyways, I want to talk about one of her perks. And it's probably not the one that you thought it would be, unless you saw the thumbnail. But anyways, so Specialist and Finesse, I think, are being talked about enough. You're probably seeing Finesse in every Vault video ever, and people are losing their minds about Specialist. The quick thing I'll say about Specialist is don't make it permanent. Don't let people rummage. And make it so if you use it, chests can't have toolboxes in them when you open them. One of those changes I think needs to happen to make it fine. Finesse, I think Finesse is an okay perk. I think it's perfectly okay. Harden, though. Harden is the one I want to talk about. I didn't get to really test this too much on PTB, but for those who don't know what it is, after unlocking a chest and either blessing or cleansing a totem, so getting rid of a totem in some way, Harden activates. It suppresses your scream and if you scream for any reason, and causes the aura of the killer to be revealed for 5 seconds. This perk, I feel, is going to be one of those perks that isn't used until something becomes particularly meta. And that's something I do want to reiterate with this perk, because I've seen some people wanting to buff it, some people wanting to change it. My one change to it is make it so you either have to do 2 chests or 2 totems rather than both. That's the one change I would make to it. However, even then, I don't think it's necessary. The problem with Hardened is that if this perk was to get buffed in some way to maybe activate from if your aura is shown, much like Object of Obsession or things like that, I think it will become too good and then become meta itself. When I think the point of this perk, other than a thematic thing, because I think it works really well from a thematic perspective, the point of this perk is to basically be a counter to Ultimate Weapon, but that's been nerfed now. And I think that is one of the biggest issues with this perk. I feel like it was designed specifically to nerf or to counter a perk that was nerfed before its release. Now, for those who don't know, a lot of these especially licensed killers and survivors are made about 6 months to a year in advance. At least that's when the production starts. So I have a feeling that Laura was being made when Xenomorph was getting finished up, so they were aware of what the perk she was going to be running with Hardened being a counter to Ultimate Weapon if it became too powerful. I also don't think Behavior thought Ultimate Weapon would become as good as it was, just saying that now. I think a lot of us did, and it kind of, not to say it came out of nowhere, but that's besides the point. Hardened, I feel like, is going to be in a good spot, and I think we need to let it sit, much like with Finesse. I think Finesse is also one we need to let sit. Specialist, I would say let sit, but keep an extremely close eye on it, honestly speaking. But Harden doesn't really need to change. Right now, there's not that much that causes screaming base kit. That is very common to see. Doctor and Clown get screwed over by this perk. I will say one killer in particular that does get messed up by this perk that I don't see very many people talking about is Pyramid Head. Whenever you step on Pyramid Head's trails, you scream. Now, you also give Killer Instinct, so he does still get eyes on you that way, but having full aura reading on Pyramid Head basically on command can be huge. It means he can basically never hit you with an M2 if you're playing it correctly. Clown with the bottles, once again, not that big of a deal, but it can give you some advantage in certain loops. And basically, whenever you're hit, this also gives you aura reading, so you can know if the killer is still chasing you for about 5 seconds. This works for any scream. It doesn't have to be something that directly says it causes scream. It can be any scream. Anything that Calm Spirit stops, this will also cause the aura reading to go. Now, the biggest hurdle this has is just that Calm Spirit is just basically a better version of this. It's basically Calm Spirit without the downside, and the downside of Calm Spirit, which is pretty much only there to give the perk tears. Once again, besides the point. I feel like with this perk being how it is, Calm Spirit does need to be looked at. I don't think Calm Spirit is like too good of a perk now, especially since the main thing it was countering isn't really used. But I do think that it definitely needs to be changed in some way so Harden can have some form of significance to shine. Maybe make Conspirit only work on every other Scream rather than every single one, and have Harden work on every single one. Perks this has effect, though. It affects Dragon's Grip. It affects Dragon's Grip, Doctor, Clown, Pyramid Head. There's a lot of other perks that this affects. Nothing that's too meta. There's a lot of things you won't see too commonly. Infectious Fright's probably the most meta, quote-unquote, perk you'll probably see ran, and even then, it's not really the most common thing in the world. I would just say maybe give it a try, but given the activation condition, I do think it's, for the most part, not worth it, unless one of those perks or killers becomes super ingrained into the meta for whatever reason. Not to say any of those killers are particularly bad. Pyramid Head is probably still like mid-A tier right now, and Clown is definitely moving his way up, especially after his buff. But even then, it's not worth it bringing this just to count of those two killers that you might not even see. That's the other big problem with this perk, is that it has these activation conditions for an effect that you might not even have happen outside of getting hit. That would really, realistically, be the only time you ever get the effect in most matches, which I don't think is worth it. Once again, though, gonna keep saying it, just set on it, see what happens with it. In any case, let me know what you guys think of Hardened, or even Finesse in Specialist. I'm still keeping an eye on Specialist, and Finesse I think is perfectly fine, and I think people are going to freak out about it for about a week, and then it'll either move into obscurity or somehow become meta. Regardless, I'm cool with Specialist. Anyways, I love y'all. Have a good one, and bye.
Subscribe, damn it. I'll be back. I always come back, and so should you, you moron.